Intersecting Media presents
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
The Next Thing in Late Night Talk.
Here we go.
While you're working, eating, and playing, he's watching.
It'll be like old times.
Keeping you informed.
Thank you.
Jason Page.
Demented and sad, but social.
Covering all the day's news from a studio somewhere in Southeast Asia.
Worldwide!
And talking about it with you.
Blah, blah, blah.
You're Up Late with Jason Page.
Hoo-ah!
Or up early.
Good morning.
But just stay up.
It is time.
Here's Jason.
Sure, why not? Let's do it again. Another week of Up Late. Glad to have you with us. All streaming platforms, no matter where you're watching. Be it Facebook Live, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter. I don't know. If there was any other place I could put us, I would. How are you today? How was your weekend? I discovered something awful this weekend. It's one of those official I'm getting old sort of things. It was awful. I'll share it a little later in the show. You know, have you ever had those moments? Those moments where you start to realize you're getting older? That realization, whether it's you got to sit down to put your socks on, you can't balance yourself on one foot, stuff like that. I don't have that one yet. But I had one this weekend that, well, it wasn't fun to discover. All right, we got a lot to do over the next couple hours. 1 hour. What am I saying? Couple hours. Next hour. 2 hours. Barely know how to do one anymore. So I have a lot I want to get into. I actually have one big thing I sort of want to start the show with today. Because I think it's... I've come across, like many of you, I've seen this story about Gorilla Glue Girl. Has anybody read up on this story? I mean, it's been all over social media because, of course, that's social media. That's the nature of social media these days. So there's this woman from Louisiana. We call her Gorilla Glue Girl just because it kind of it all goes together, the 3 Gs. What's that called? I forget. But anyway, onomatopoeia or something. Anyway, Gorilla Glue Girl is Tessica Brown. And there's a theme that I want to get to in all of this. But Tessica Brown was recently brought to a medical center looking for treatment after mistakenly using Gorilla Glue spray adhesive in place of actual hairspray. Now, her story went viral earlier this month after she revealed she had her hair, well, it had been stuck in the same style for a month. Mine's been stuck like this for a lot longer than that. But stuck in the same style for a month since she substituted her usual gotta be glued spray with the industrial strength glue when she ran out. My hair, it don't move. You hear what I'm telling you? It don't move, she said in the original video that was posted to TikTok. I've washed my hair 15 times. In another video, she was seen putting on a ton of shampoo, which failed to penetrate her rock-hard hair. CNN has reached out to her for comment. Not much said there. According to Gorilla Glue's website, do you really need to look at the website? But okay. The glue is 100% waterproof, usually used to fix bathroom tiles, wood flooring, decking. Can be removed with acetone or isopropyl alcohol. When the company got wind of Brown's dilemma, it reached out to Twitter. Said, "Hi there, we're sorry to learn about your experience. We do not recommend using our products in hair as they are considered permanent. You could try soaking the affected area in warm soapy water or applying rubbing alcohol to the area." Another photo of her showed up on social media because, hey, let's keep sharing the story of my embarrassment. On her Instagram, Brown updated her followers. Do I even want to know how many followers she has? Should we look? How many followers could she possibly have? Let's find. Now she's probably got 1 million of them because she's Gorilla Glue Girl. Yeah, now she has 643,000 followers. Because when you do something stupid, you get rewarded. And that's what this is. But I'll finish that aspect of the story in just a second. She posted a series of images of herself checking into a hospital in an effort to remove the product. You could see a nurse working on her. This is really about to be a long process, she captioned a photo. I'm glad MF's actually supporting her through this, the Chicago native told his 8.2 million followers. Chance the Rapper wrote this. I'm glad MF's actually supporting her through this. MF's meaning mother effers. When I watched the video the second time, it was hard to laugh because I could tell Shorty genuinely didn't know she had put one of the world's most powerful adhesives in her, we'll just say hair. I hope she recovers well. Well, now the story has taken an interesting turn. Because as with everything in this world, Gorilla Glue Girl, yeah, she's got an attorney. Yeah, she wants to sue, maybe. And Gorilla Glue, for its part, has put out a statement saying, well, essentially what they've already said. You're not supposed to put it in your hair. I just can't. I just can't. This girl put Gorilla Glue in her hair. And where there might have been initially some sympathy, where there might have been initially some wanting to feel sorry for this young woman, my sympathy quotient completely dissolves the moment you start trying to blame other people for your stupidity. We live in this era, and this is kind of where I'm going with this. If you look at the screen, you see a few different images flashing across. We live in this era that has no accountability. We live in this day and age where people can do whatever they want and blame somebody else. Well, you got charged with sexual harassment. Oh, it's because I drank too much. There's always an excuse. There's always a way to try and spin out of your stupidity. How about if Tessica Brown, could you imagine what it would mean in this era of accountability if Tessica Brown stood up and said, I was trying to get my hair solid. It's Gorilla Glue. I tried it. My bad. Stupid mistake. Don't be a fool like me. Can you imagine the message that would send? Instead of, well, I ate the Tide Pods, so I'm going to blame Tide because I ate laundry detergent. It's idiotic. It's idiotic, and there's no end to it anymore. And I can't speak about whether this sort of thing is happening in other countries, whether people are eating Tide Pods in, France and the UK and Germany or Australia, if the Tide Pod challenge was big there. Or if some dodo in one of those countries decided, I'm going to spray Gorilla Glue in my hair. I can't speak to whether those things are happening in those countries. But in the United States, they live in the era of zero accountability. Whether it's personal, whether it's political, whether it's entertainment, everybody's got an excuse except to turn the mirror on themselves and say, you know what? My bad. You know what? It was stupid of me to spray Gorilla Glue in my hair. I mean, what more can Gorilla Glue do? I mean, do we have to lock the product up? It wouldn't have mattered in this case. It's not like she isn't an adult. I have accidentally gotten like that super kind of glue on my hands, and it takes forever to get off. I can't even imagine what it's like to try and get it out of your hair. But if I did it, I sure as hell wouldn't try to sue Gorilla Glue or blame somebody else. We live in this era of zero accountability. We really do. And there is no end to it. If your mother tells you the stove is hot and you touch the stove and you burn your hand, you can't blame somebody else. And this extends to a number of things. I was watching an interview tonight. Remember the guy who stormed the Capitol? He stormed the Capitol and he had the horns on. He was like doing the Conan the Barbarian look. Sorry, that might be an insult to Conan the Barbarian. But remember the guy that stormed the Capitol? Well, he and a lot of other people charged for the insurrection attempt at the Capitol have gone the route of saying, well, Trump told us to do it. You know, it's the Nuremberg defense, basically. Well, they told us to do it. And as much as I think Trump needs to be held to account and impeached and convicted in the Senate, even though he won't be, at some point as an adult, don't you have to kind of take a step back, remove yourself from the situation the best you can, or somebody in your life has to pull you aside and say, hey, you know, you decided to storm the Capitol. The president didn't buy you a ticket, tell you to go to a rally, tell you to beat up cops with hockey sticks and fire extinguishers and kill cops, and talk about hanging Mike Pence or shooting Nancy Pelosi. Donald Trump didn't tell you to do that. At some point, don't you have to be held accountable for your own actions? At some point, don't you have to stand up and say, you know what, my bad. I was duped. I was fooled. I was conned, but still, I got to be responsible for my own actions. I accept whatever punishment comes my way. Or are we all in such a cover your ass mode, CYA? Are we all in such a cover your ass mode that we have to find a fall guy? There always has to be somebody else to blame. There always has to be that guy that's the reason why A, B, and C happened. That's what a lot of the people arrested in the Trump insurrection, and it is the Trump insurrection, the attack at the Capitol, they're trying to blame Donald Trump. And again, Trump will be held to account, as he should be. But at the end of the day, you have to be responsible for your own actions on some level. Gorilla Glue Girl wants to blame Gorilla Glue. The insurrectionists want to blame Donald Trump and say, well, if he didn't tell us to go there, if he didn't intimate that he wanted us to be there, we wouldn't have gone. And then there's the politicians themselves. And this is why Trump won't be convicted in the Senate. People like Rand Paul, you know, the senator from Kentucky, who has basically made it clear where he stands on all of this. This weekend, here's Rand Paul on Fox News with Chris Wallace explaining, well, I'll let Chris Wallace ask the question and you can hear the answer for yourself.
Under a different name.
This is the case that the Democratic House managers will make before the Senate this next week. They will note that Mr. Trump tweeted his followers a number of tweets, but one of them to come to a big protest on January 6th. Be there, will be wild, he wrote. And then they will play videos of what happened that day, what he said, how they reacted. We made our own compilation of those, including some clips that are circulating on the internet. Take a look, Senator.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Take the Capitol! Take the Capitol!
Senator, you talk about other people who have said things, but, you know, there had been weeks of misrepresentations about the election. Then he called people to come to Washington. Then he talks about fighting like hell. People in the crowd are talking about going to the Capitol, and then they demand to find Speaker Pelosi and to hang Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States. Is that not incitement for insurrection?
I don't condone any of the language, and like I say, I opposed philosophically and voted against overturning the election. However, I think you're going to see the Trump defense play video of Maxine Waters telling crowds to mob Trump administration in restaurants and attack them. They'll probably show clips of Cory Booker saying, "Get up in their face" of these Congress people. You'll probably see comments from Representative Omar wishing and celebrating the violence that happened to me when I had 6 ribs broken and part of my lung removed. I think you're going to see all of this, and people are going to have to judge for themselves. Are we going to impeach and potentially criminally prosecute people for political speech when they say, "Get up and fight for your country, let your voices be heard"? Has nobody in this country heard of figurative speech? You can argue that his position was wrong and that it was misguided. I accept all of that. But if you're going to criminalize his speech, you have to do it with the same standard. You can't just criminalize Republican speech and ignore all the Democrats who have incited violence. Look at the mayor of Seattle. She went on and on about this being a summer of love. Kamala Harris went forward and said, we should bail out these violent protesters. One of them has gotten out 3 times, committed crimes 3 times, including cracking the skull, fracturing the skull, and causing a brain injury after Kamala Harris advocated for getting him out of prison. So the thing is we can't just have a double standard. Both parties have to be treated the same. Okay. If I think Democrats had any bit of self-reflection, they would be saying this is a really terrible idea.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, let's...
So that was the words of Rand Paul, trying to give some sort of rationalization for why he doesn't think Donald Trump should be held accountable for the actions of these people. But it just goes to show, again, it's not Donald Trump's fault. It's Democrats' fault because they did this and they did that. Well, guess what? Democratic supporters didn't go and raid the Capitol. They didn't attempt an insurrection, a coup, an overthrow of the government. So you can't compare the two. You can't compare setting fire to buildings in some prominent cities. You can't. It's not the same. We've seen protests, and we've seen unruly protests, and we've seen protests that even get out of hand. They weren't insurrections. This was an insurrection attempt, brought on by the words of the president and the actions of his supporters. Why can't both things be true? Why is it because Donald Trump is wrong that relieves all culpability from those that support him? It doesn't. They have to be held to account. The Nuremberg defense, to me, well, they told us to do it, so we were just following orders. It doesn't apply to me. Doesn't make sense to me. But I guess we're going to find out how that all plays out here in the next few days. But to me, the era of accountability, I mean, there just is none anymore. We live in an age where it's always somebody else's fault. I mean, look, I'll even go so far in talking about coronavirus. There has been a ton of mismanagement in all of this. Maybe even to a criminal degree in terms of how the government, your taxpayer dollars, has handled the coronavirus. But at the same time, you have to hold yourself to account when it comes to things like wearing a mask, social distancing. I mean, there are people that have willingly, openly flaunted the rules that the doctors have literally come out a million different times in a million different ways. Celebrities have told you about it. Politicians have told you about it. Most of them. Some have tried not to. Have literally done everything they can to get in your face and say, wear a mask, wash your hands, socially distance. If you do those things, you're probably going to be okay. Yet we live in an era where people don't want to do that. And then they find themselves on a ventilator or worse. And everybody wants to blame somebody else. And again, there is plenty of blame to go through the Trump administration for the way they handled the coronavirus. I mean, they were a bunch of bumbling fools by and large. I mean, we've seen all of the reporting on it by now. And if you choose to ignore that, that's on you. But we've all seen by now the way they handled the coronavirus pandemic. But what we need to remember is there are a lot of people out there that willingly decided to do the wrong thing, that flaunted the guidelines put in front of them, that chose to believe the president even when there was a million other people out there that told you this isn't the correct way to go about this. Going to bars, going to rallies without masks, going to Trump rallies, going to protests. These weren't the right things to do. And people said, I know better than you. My freedoms mean too much. That's the crux of the problem. There's a guest I want to get on, so I don't want to spoil the column she wrote, but she's going to come on in a couple weeks. Author wrote a great column for The Guardian about the fact that certain societies have really struggled in coronavirus because of the lack of authority, for lack of a better word, in terms of policing personal behavior. Because in the United States, all we do is scream, freedom, freedom, freedom of this, freedom of that. I could carry a gun. I could, put it in a holster and carry it on my hip. Open carry. I could have it in my car. I could protect my house. I could say whatever I want because freedom of speech, even though that's not really true. Freedom comes with responsibility. If you're not responsible enough to handle the freedoms given to you, what is the government to do? You have freedom to put Gorilla Glue in your hair. Ask Tessica Brown. She did. You have freedom to eat a Tide Pod. Nobody can stop you. But if you wind up in the hospital or worse, you can't blame somebody else. You cannot constantly go around blaming other people. His kid did it, so why can't my kid? Or, I saw Johnny throw a bat through a window, so I just decided to throw a baseball through it. It's not as bad, right? Doesn't wash. Doesn't fly. You cannot constantly live in a society. If you constantly live in a society that operates this way, you're not going to have anything left soon. You're not going to have anything left. There is no civilized society when there's no accountability for one's actions. You cannot constantly live in a world where nobody's accountable for their actions. Whether you're putting Gorilla Glue in your hair, whether you're trying to storm the Capitol, whether it's your words, whether it's your actions, no matter what it may be. Can't live that way. All right. I'm going to spend the entire final 30 minutes of the show today talking about sports. Yeah, I am. Because there's some interesting sports stories that I want to get to. And we will get to them coming up in a couple minutes, including whether or not Tom Brady can now lay claim to being the greatest team sport athlete of all time. I talked about it in the latest episode of the Intersection podcast, which launched earlier today. Go and subscribe if you haven't. The Intersection podcast from Believe, BLEAV, is how you spell that. It's on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Music. Go and download the Intersection podcast for yourself, and you'll hear what I said about Tom Brady. Or you can just hang around for just a couple of minutes, and I'll tell you in my own words. Stick around. We welcome you back up late with Jason Page on a Monday night / Tuesday afternoon, depending on where you are, anywhere from the United States all the way to Singapore, where I am, hanging out with you guys. So I thought the Kansas City Chiefs were going to win Super Bowl 55. Let me preface what I'm about to say by saying that. But if anybody listened to the show last week, they would know that I was rooting for Tom Brady, which a lot of people may find surprising because everybody thinks I'm anti-Tom Brady, anti-anything Patriots, blah, 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 blah. Tired old idea that's out there. But I was rooting for Tom Brady to win. I didn't think he would. I didn't think the Chiefs would come in that unprepared, play that sloppy a football game, and then you have people blaming the officials and blah, blah, blah. I mean, the Chiefs had no right winning that game. 31-9 wasn't even indicative of how big of a blowout this game actually was. But then on the latest episode of the Intersection podcast, I said something that now is being picked up in a lot of other places too, this idea that I believe with his 7th Super Bowl win in 10 tries. Think about that. By the way, 2 of those losses. 2? Anybody? New York Giants. Eli Manning, 2-0 against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. That's why one day Eli Manning better be a Hall of Famer. But anyway, I digress. Tom Brady, I'm not one that is prone to hyperbole. Anybody who knows me knows we try to avoid the hyperbole zone on any show that I'm hosting, whether it was my radio days, the web, podcasts, whatever. But I have no problem coming out and saying Tom Brady is the single greatest team sport athlete ever. Period. Full stop. And this is the greatest example of why that is the case. He is the greatest team sport athlete of all time. And I use those words carefully because now I've heard, when you start the debate of is he the greatest athlete of all time, some people will say, well, what about Serena Williams and what she's accomplished? And people will start getting into individual sports, solo sports, figure skating, tennis, track and field. Usain Bolt, who's basically been unbeaten for his entire career, unmatched throughout his entire career. All these different individual athletes that do not play team sports. I am talking about the greatest team sport athlete of all time. Who are you putting ahead of Tom Brady? Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan had a great career. Arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. All the titles we know about with the Chicago Bulls. All the MVPs. What happened when he tried to come back and go play for the Wizards? How'd that work out? Again, unbeaten in the finals. It's an amazing mark. But the longevity, in my opinion, the longevity of a Brady doing this as long as he has puts him a notch above Michael Jordan. The fact that 21 years into his career, he is still capable of going to another franchise and winning a Super Bowl. By the way, this puts to rest for me the Brady versus Belichick idea. That fight is done. It is a TKO. Tom Brady wins. Any idea that, well, it was Belichick that made Brady, or it was Brady that made Belichick, which was it? We now know. While Bill Belichick is a great coach and a future Hall of Famer, there's no question that Tom Brady was what ultimately helped catapult the Patriots to those titles, not Bill Belichick. And it's not and quite frankly, we should have already known that because last year, in a year where everybody got on Brady, including me, by the way, that team still won double-digit games and had no right winning double-digit games because it wasn't that good. But for Brady to leave that situation, abbreviated offseason, abbreviated training camp, everything that came with a COVID football season, for him to go to a new organization, a new conference, facing different teams, different schedules, new players to get used to, a new offensive coordinator in Byron Leftwich, take all of that and then look at what Tom Brady accomplished. Winning his 7th Super Bowl, beating a juggernaut in the Kansas City Chiefs, again, who came in wholly unprepared for a Super Bowl. Sorry, anybody who watched that game would have to admit Kansas City looked unprepared. And in portions of the second half, when there still might have been an outside shot of coming back, it looked like a team that had kind of quit. And we got our Super Bowl. I want to know who you argue as being the better team sport athlete than Brady. If we're talking all time, Gretzky, great run with the Oilers. Doesn't have nearly as many championships. Know what he did with the Kings and elevating that organization. We know what he did with the Rangers. But you still think of Gretzky. You still think of what he did ultimately with the Oilers. Yes, he did raise the profile of hockey in Los Angeles, but that isn't what goes into saying he's the greatest team sport athlete of all time. Who else are you going to argue? There's nobody in football. Forget it. The conversation's over. The book is closed. Tom Brady is the greatest football player to ever play the game. You can make arguments for other people all you want, but you're being a contrarian, or you're showing potential bias against Tom Brady or animus towards Tom Brady for, and look, there are things about Brady that drive me nuts that I can't stand. But I can no longer sit here and try to make the argument against Tom Brady being anything other than the greatest of all time. He's the greatest. He's the GOAT. Give me somebody better. The closest you can come up with is Jordan. And Jordan could not sustain the level of excellence for the period of time that Tom Brady has. And I get that they are different sports. And I know that Tom Brady, for most of his career, with the exception of the one knee injury that he suffered in 2008? With the exception of that one injury, Tom Brady's been virtually untouched his entire career in a game where players get injured a lot. But that's also the advantages of experience, knowing when to go down, knowing when to take the hit. Being establishing yourself in the game as simply a pocket passer and nothing else. You're not a runner first, passer second. You're not equal parts runner and equal parts thrower. Tom Brady came into this league as a pocket passer. That's what he was. It's what he is. He's not retiring. He's 43. People joke about him playing until he's 50. Why the hell can't he? I mean, I don't have his stats in front of me for this past season. Let me see if I can find him. Tom Brady 2021 stats. I'll give you the numbers on him here in just a second, just because I think it is kind of interesting to look at what he did in 2020. 2020 Brady was 40 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, threw for 4,633 yards. And he basically was 4-1 in touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, at 43 with a new team, new offense, all of that, 4-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, you can't get, there's just no getting around it. I mean, he's got 230 wins for his career against 69 losses. I don't even know if that includes his playoff win-loss total. Playoffs, he's 34-11. I mean, the team won their last, I think, 7 games of the season to win the Super Bowl. They peaked at the right time. And look, it goes into this other conversation of guys that make those around them better. And in the case of Brady, it is obvious he makes players around him better. Still, at 43. And I'm not just talking with the physical abilities. I'm talking, and I hate to use this word because I always kind of mock people who use this, the intangibles. The work ethic, the getting in your face to get the very most out of you, that ability to wring every last drop out of the rag, whether it's a high-priced rag, whether it's a Mike Evans, whether it's a veteran guy in Rob Gronkowski who helped turn back the clock in that Super Bowl with a couple of touchdown catches. I mean, there's no getting around what Tom Brady means to any team that he plays for. And again, he has ended the argument. It's over. Not that Belichick isn't a great head coach. Because sometimes the mark of a great head coach is knowing how to get out of the way when you have something special like a Tom Brady. And let Brady be Brady. Sometimes there are coaches that hold themselves in such high regard, and Belichick to some degree might be this guy, which is why you've heard some muttering amongst those that have left the Belichick Patriots ranks about the fact that, well, the way he ran things kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. It was off-putting in some way. So some might argue that Tom Brady succeeded in spite of the way Belichick ran things. Even if he was a great game manager, even if he had all the tricks up his sleeve, all of that. Great coach, Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. But if there was ever a discussion to be had about Brady versus Belichick, the argument's over. Tom Brady wins, hands down, as a result of what he accomplished on Sunday night in Tampa Bay, leading a team to a Super Bowl in its home stadium for the first time, winning that game. It really is. It's nothing short of remarkable what Brady managed to accomplish. Even with the Chiefs basically stumbling around the football field for 4 quarters, with the exception of Patrick Mahomes, who I thought put forth as gutty an effort as you're going to get. Clearly, he wasn't 100%. But again, it's not an excuse. If you're out there and you're playing, you do the best you can. But, and look, I mean, are you going to bet against the Patriots next year? Drew Brees is likely done in New Orleans. We know what the Falcons have been. The Panthers are the Panthers. Is there anybody that you would put above Brady and the Buccaneers next year in the NFC South? I don't think so. I mean, who are you going to put above? Who are you going to put above the Patriots in the NFC? I'll wait. I mean, Seattle. I love Russell Wilson, but there's no question that team fell apart down the stretch. And Wilson was not playing his best football when it mattered most. You want to give me Green Bay? Aaron Rodgers is still arguably the best quarterback in football. But is Green Bay on the level of Tampa Bay? I mean, we could be talking about a situation where we're right back in this spot. February 9th, 2022, talking about Tom Brady winning his 8th Super Bowl. And forget this idea, by the way, of anybody catching him. That argument is also put to rest for me. Oh, never say never, Jay. No, I'll say never. Nobody's throwing back-to-back no-hitters again in Major League Baseball. Nobody's stealing 100 bases in Major League Baseball again. Nobody's scoring 100 points in an NBA game again. Nobody is breaking Tom Brady's record when it comes to Super Bowl titles. Not happening. I mean, take a look at what it took for Brady to do that over 20 years, the 10 Super Bowl appearances. I mean, you're going to have to appear in 10 Super Bowls. And in the age of parity and salary cap, it's just not happening. It's not happening. Tom Brady will go down in history as the greatest team sport athlete ever. Till somebody can prove to me otherwise or give me an argument for somebody else. And the mere fact that people will throw out multiple names as possibilities makes the argument all the stronger for Brady. Because Brady's the only one that I think you could probably get a consensus around. If I put a poll up of Jordan, Gretzky, Messi, Ronaldo, Pele, Jordan, if I didn't already say his name, if you put all those names in a list, Brady's going to get the majority of the vote. And not just because he just won a Super Bowl and it's fresh in our minds. But going to Tampa Bay in his first season, granted with a team that had a different roster than the one Jameis Winston was operating with, when we all have to be honest about that, Jameis Winston did not have Rob Gronkowski to throw the football to. He didn't have a cadre of running backs and tight ends and receivers. He didn't have Antonio Brown. He didn't have any of that. So to make the argument that this is, well, Tom Brady did it and Jameis Winston couldn't, they were playing with completely different rosters. But who are you going to argue as being better all-time team sport athlete than Tom Brady? I'm all ears. If you got a suggestion, let me hear it. If you're not following the show or subscribing, no matter what platform you're watching us on, if you're watching us on Twitch, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on Facebook Live, go and follow the Intersecting Media page. That's one way to watch the show. YouTube, click the follow button or subscribe button. You could do that as well. And as for Twitch, I mean, Periscope's going away in April, so you can't really follow us there, but you can follow me on Twitter at The Back Page. Again, hit me up there on Twitter at The Back Page. Some other thoughts on the Super Bowl that I want to get to. We'll take a quick time out. I will give you what I thought was my favorite Super Bowl commercial. My favorite Super Bowl commercial. We'll get to that and tie things up with a couple odds and ends as we continue. Up Late with Jason Page. Thanks for being with us. right, we welcome you back Up Late with Jason Page on a Monday night / Tuesday afternoon, depending on where you are watching. We come to you Monday through Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. We also get started at noon Tuesday through Saturday in Singapore, where I am, where it's kind of cloudy today. Let's see, what we got? It's kind of cloudy here. Still hot, though. Always, I shouldn't say hot. It's always very warm. Never gets to like 90. It's always like 82 to 86, humid, that sort of thing. All right, so I want to unveil my pick and get your thoughts on everything that was the Super Bowl, but not related to the game. The commercials. Well, why a lot of people watch Super Bowl Sunday. I haven't seen what the TV ratings were, by the way. I'll have to look that up here when I have a second before we go. But I want to get your thoughts on the commercials. And in particular, what commercial was the very best? Let me give you my pick. I thought there were some that kind of hit the mark. And obviously, because of COVID, there were certain things that maybe some didn't want to touch. But to me, this was the best commercial of the Super Bowl. Let's play it.
Hey, you have to wash Jason Alexander hoodie.
It looks clean to me.
Is it, though?
Look at what's happened to me. I can't believe it myself. Suddenly I'm up on top of the world. It should have been somebody else.
Be sure to get the bugs off the window.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer.
You owe Jason Alexander hoodie an apology.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Hey, that's my face! You can't just wear my face!
My mom told me to say I'm sorry.
Give me back my face!
Jason Alexander's getting old, huh? I know. We all are. To me, that was the best commercial of the Super Bowl. That was my favorite, hands down. And maybe it's because I'm a bit nostalgic and I was a huge Seinfeld fan, but that was the best commercial of the Super Bowl for my money. He was awesome. Can't wear my face. Give me back my face. If you've got one that you thought was better, hit me up in the chat box. Let me know. I thought that was the best of all, though. Super Bowl ratings. Super Bowl TV ratings as of 3 hours ago were still being processed and verified. That's what Deadline is reporting. Yahoo has a story on it that says, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been able to find anything definitive. Unprecedented delay is what Deadline is saying. Nielsen still doesn't have any Super Bowl ratings to report. Quote, Super Bowl numbers are still being processed and verified. A spokesperson for the blushing company finally said today. We anticipate that final viewing figures, which will include out-of-home viewing, will be available to the media tomorrow. We'll update the press accordingly. So, we're not sure if this was the most watched Super Bowl. I mean, look, it was certainly disappointing. I mean, there's no getting around that. It was a snooze fest in terms of the excitement level. I think a lot of people thought it would be a much closer game. Certainly a much higher scoring game, at least on both sides of the football. Look, the weekend to me, I'm not a huge weekend fan, so I'm the wrong person to ask. I like when they trot out the older acts. I understand why they bring out somebody like The Weeknd, but The Weeknd just doesn't do anything for me. I thought the look of it, the entertainment aspect of it was good, especially, again, given the restrictions you have with something like COVID-19. But The Weeknd just doesn't do anything for me. How funny that they don't have any ratings of it. I mean, usually ratings, they're available right away. You know, the very next day. We're going to be going into Tuesday with no idea how this game did from a ratings perspective. It's kind of odd to me. And the NFL season's over now. Now we see what happens with the NBA as they continue to sort of plod along through this season with COVID being what it has. Baseball now has made it official, an agreement between players and owners that will see no universal DH this year and no expanded playoffs, which I think is a miss for baseball because I thought the expanded playoffs and the universal DH was pretty awesome last year. But the official agreement for 2021, 7-inning doubleheaders. You see that in minor league baseball now. Runners on second base to start extra innings will return. No universal DH, no expanded playoffs. That's the official word coming from Major League Baseball late on Monday night. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Up Late with Jason Page. Hard to believe we're out of time, but we are. 1 hour flew by. If you missed the show, we always have it available to replay on Twitch. It's on YouTube as well. Or on our Intersecting Media Facebook page. Intersecting Media Twitch page. There's no excuse if you want to watch the show. If you can't watch it live, you can watch it some other time. Download the Intersection podcast from Believe, B-L-E-A-V. The Intersection podcast from yours truly. Every Monday we release a new episode. We have a two-parter this week. My conversation with Beatrice Finn with the International Coalition to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. We had a 45-minute conversation. Part 1 of it dropped today. Part 2 will drop tomorrow. Some really interesting thoughts on nuclear proliferation with her. What else? Oh, the Intersection newsletter is coming. Keep an eye out for that. Daily newsletter for you. Oh, I got one more. I was saying at the beginning of the show, I had one of those oh no moments where you start to realize how old you are. It came this weekend. I need reading glasses. I'm not going to get them, but I know that I need them. I've officially started to have to do one of these things where when I read something, I have to do this. I have to like hold it away from my face because I can't read it if I put it too close. Yeah. I've reached the age of reading glasses. Not fun. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to go now. Mask up. Stay safe. Don't put any Gorilla Glue in your hair. And I'll see you all back here on Tuesday night / Wednesday afternoon for Up Late with Jason Page. Till then, I'm Jason. See ya.